the Nebraska Cancer Research Center, in partnership with Bryan Health, Nebraska Hematology Oncology, St. Elizabeth Regional Medical Center, and Southeast Nebraska Cancer Center, presents Lincoln's Conversations About Clinical Trials. Hello. Welcome to Lincoln's Conversations About Clinical Trials. I'm Carol Ott Schacht of Strategic Marketing CPR. I'm spokesperson for the Nebraska Cancer Research Center. I'm a clinical trial participant and a cancer survivor. I'm very excited to welcome you to this show today. Today we're going to be talking about the journey of a cancer patient choosing to join a clinical trial. So without any further ado, I'm going to introduce you to our guests today. First, we have Tom Bassett, and Tom is a well-known Lincolnite, is a person who, as I said, is going through a clinical trial, is going through cancer, and is a cancer survivor now. Many people know Tom, though, when he was at the Dental Association. He was with the Nebraska Dental Association, the executive director there, and was also at the Stroke Association. And many people also know you through the antique roadshow things that you do, because you take that on the road, you participate in many groups and evaluate and appraising their antiques. But you're an antique and coin dealer, aren't you?
Yes, I am.
Yes.
Have been doing that full time now for about 7 years, and as a hobby for half of forever, I think.
Oh, well, it's very exciting you can be with us today, Tom. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me here.
Absolutely. And next to Tom, we have Dr. Mehta. Dr. Mehta is an oncologist with Nebraska Hematology Oncology, and she's Tom's oncologist, and is going to be talking with us today about the experience of going through a clinical trial, why that's important for a patient to do that, and how he or she can benefit. Dr. Mehta is a beloved oncologist, and many people who see her truly love her. I would also like to say that she is a clinical investigator, so works with our clinical trials and is a member of our advisory committee. Welcome, Dr. Mehta.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
We're glad to have you too. Next to Dr. Mehta, we have Jennifer Mara, who's a registered nurse and a clinical research nurse for the Nebraska Cancer Research Center. And Jennifer, we're delighted to have you here. You're part of the fabulous staff that we have at Nebraska Cancer Research Center. Thank you so much for being with us today. And I understand you're going to be talking about the process that you go through to join a clinical trial.
Yes.
All right, great. And thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
All right, let's start with you, Tom. Now, you have been experiencing your cancer journey for a period of time now, and you chose to join a clinical trial. Could you share with us a little bit about your experience?
Well, I will, certainly. About 2.5 years ago, I experienced a very severe fall. And I knew I had hurt my rib cage and my hip and my back. And so I went to our family physician and had lots of x-rays, an exam, some blood study. And a few days later, I get a letter in the mail saying, x-rays showed that you have no fractures. That was good news. No broken bones. That was good news. But the blood study showed a very high level of protein. That's not good news. So he made an appointment for me with Dr. Mehta, and used a couple terms in that letter that I had never heard of before, but I did recognize one word, and that was the word cancer. And there's a reality when you hear that word.
Yes.
It's one of those things, I think, where you know you know somebody that has cancer. Not you, but somebody else. And I guess now it was me that was seeing that. Well, Dr. Mehta, then I met with her, and she had a number of suggestions and on tests that should be done so they could really isolate exactly what might be wrong with me. MRI, X-ray from toenails on up. And
wow, they were really going to check everything.
They were going to check everything, yeah. And blood study and so forth. And then I sat down with her, and I had my wife there with me because, of course, she asks more questions and remembers more answers than I would probably ever know.
It's good to have someone with you.
It's good to have
it?
someone with you, yes. And that's when I first heard really what the term multiple myeloma is, and I will let Dr. Mehta talk more on that. But too much protein in your blood to where this can really affect your bone structure. And from there on, it's been, I'm just so thankful that this was discovered as early as it was, and that I have Dr. Mehta helping, working with me, Jennifer also, and that I can say that we are just so lucky in Lincoln.
We are.
To have the oncology clinics that we do, and just the high level of care.
I think many people don't recognize, and I think that's very important for our viewers today, is that we have such extraordinary care right here in Lincoln.
Yes.
There really isn't a need to go anywhere else.
No, that's very true.
So tell us a little bit about the clinical trial. I don't expect the technical details. We'll let Dr. Mehta
I wouldn't
talk
tell you
about
that anyway.
that.
I don't know that either.
But what made you want to join a clinical trial, Tom?
Well, first of all, Dr. Mehta informed us of a trial that was something that was ongoing, and there are restrictions. You have to be so old. I think 60 or 65 was the youngest. I'm right there,
Oh,
so that was just like, yes, oh,
yes,
that's me, and we're talking me. So, and then suggested that this is maybe something I should look into, because her advice was, we would like you to be taking these various medications, and that would fit nicely in with this one particular trial. And so then I was introduced to the Nebraska Cancer Research Center, and heard a great deal. Now, Jennifer, I don't know, it was you, or I don't believe it was you. It was you. It was a long time ago. It was 2.5 years ago, Jennifer. I'm lucky I remember me from 2.5 years ago, much less. So, okay, and you can tell we rehearsed that one real well. But sat down with Jennifer, and she told me of the potential for being a part of a clinical trial. And I think many people, unfortunately, probably think of a clinical trial as, okay, you get the real pill, or you get the aspirin,
The placebo,
the
or
M&A,
the, you know,
or
yes,
whatever.
right, yeah, something that really
And
doesn't
that's right.
have anything. Yeah.
And she informed me, no, not at all. This is a study where there are going to be 3 medications, and everyone in the study gets 2 that are the same, and then the third medication, both of which are proven to be very successful, but this is a combination. One will get one type of medication, and then the other portion of the study will get the other type. And it's just like, okay, well then, this sounds like a winner to me. And an agreement that anytime I wanted to quit for whatever reason, I could.
I think that's something that other people don't know
Yeah.
either, that once you sign up for a clinical
Yeah.
trial, that's not like you're signing your life away. At any time you decide you don't want to participate, you can actually stop.
Yeah. But it just seemed like such a win-win, and then in the back of my mind, I'm also thinking, well, this is a nice thing to do for somebody 10 years from now, 20 years from now.
It is. It's not only a nice thing to do for yourself, but as you say, it really is going to help somebody else. So,
And I have seen studies and charts that look at multiple myeloma, and where it was maybe 15 years ago, and survival and potential for quality of life, and where we are now. So there's been some others that 15, 20 years ago did studies that have paid rewards to people like me.
Yes, they were paying it forward. It's
Yes, they were.
it's about paying it forward,
Isn't it, though?
really, isn't it? Yes. Well, Tom, thank you. Wow, it's difficult going through a journey like this, and it sounds like there are moments of hope, very bright moments, and that the people you've had on your journey with you have really made a significant difference.
Big difference, and having Dr. Mehta and Jennifer and the Cancer Research Center, their staff, Dr. Mehta's staff at the Nebraska Hematology and Oncology Clinic, just super people.
They're really phenomenal, aren't
yes.
they? Well, let's talk with Dr. Mehta now As we said earlier, Dr. Mehta is your oncologist. She's at Nebraska Hematology Oncology. And Dr. Mehta, could you begin to tell us a little bit about, so what would the benefits be? Why would a patient want to participate in a clinical trial?
Clinical trials are very essential for advancements in medical knowledge and treatments. They are probably the first step towards discovering new treatments or new ways of diagnosis or detecting a disease, or even for prevention of disease. There are several different ways of doing these clinical trials, like comparing existing treatments and to see if one is better than another, or looking into a new treatment for a disease that probably does not have good treatment options, or attempting a combination of treatment versus a single agent, or like Tom had, just comparing two different kinds of treatments, which are both standards. And thank you, Tom, for those kind words of yours. And he's been a wonderful person to go along for the last 2 years, and has done really well. So as Tom said, we do offer clinical trials for those patients who walk into the door with a new diagnosis. As you can understand, it's very overwhelming in the beginning with a new diagnosis, learning about new treatments, and then learning about a clinical trial that they have no information about. And it's a lot of information, but people should have an open mind towards participating in clinical trials, because that's what brought us to where we are now with the current advances. And that's probably what's going to hold the future for medicine.
Oh, I think that's so exciting when you say that. And it's similar to what Tom mentioned, in that someone before him participated 15, 20 years ago in a clinical trial that is helping him today. And in turn, he and others in clinical trials are helping those for the future.
Absolutely. There's no question that clinical trials have played a crucial role in development of various treatments that we have now, and will continue to play that major role in the future.
Well, thank you so much for that. Yeah. Tell me a little bit more about Tom's study, if you could. Something that I think our viewers would be very interested in learning about. Tom began to touch on a little bit of the fact that there's 2 standard treatments. You also mentioned that. What is the study really trying to determine?
When there is not one standard treatment and you have different options, sometimes we don't know if one treatment is better than another, and also to assess the side effects.
Yes.
It also gives us an idea about, okay, would one treatment be safer than another treatment with less side effects and yet be equally effective? So in this particular situation, we had 2 great drugs that are there, and so the study was looking into to see if one would be better than another. They have both been already tested and are approved treatments for this particular condition, multiple myeloma. And so Tom was receiving one kind of treatment, which he did have some difficulties in the beginning, and we adjusted the dose, and subsequently things went fairly smoothly and are still going well. And I do have to mention that some of the advantages or benefits of participating in a clinical trial are you might have access to a drug that is not yet available and will be available in the future, but now by participating in a trial you are having access to that drug. Another benefit is that in some clinical trials provide the drugs for free. So that's definitely
that's a huge advantage, wouldn't you say? Because I would think that cancer treatment, particularly when you're talking about perhaps a chemotherapy or another type of therapy, could be very expensive.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I think the biggest benefit is by participating in a clinical trial, you may be helping yourself or may not be if the treatment does not work, but you are making a huge contribution for medical knowledge, research, and development of drugs, and that's a big benefit right there.
It is a big benefit. I think many people, when they're first diagnosed with cancer, are very afraid, and it's very difficult to begin to even think about participating in a clinical trial. Your first thought is, oh yeah, oh no, you know, what do I do now? But I think what you're sharing with us is that there really is hope, because we do have medical advancements as a result of clinical trials that physicians and scientists have been conducting for many years, that then have resulted in the treatments that we're able to use today, which then help cure people's cancer.
And these clinical trials are conducted in a very carefully monitored and controlled fashion. So patients are being monitored very closely, which is an extra benefit.
It is an extra benefit, and I think you mentioned a couple of things, Dr. Mehta, are very important. And one, that Tom, when he began his treatment, had some side effects, and so you had to go back and adjust his medications. And I think it's important for our viewers to know that, again, when you join a trial or even when you start cancer treatment, that you aren't stuck on that treatment forever. I mean, when you start to have issues or concerns, that then there are ways in which you can then either modify the dose or maybe the frequency, things like that. And I think that's very important. Or, as Tom said earlier, he wasn't signing his life away totally. He signed to join the clinical trial, but if there was some reason why he wanted to leave the trial, he could.
Absolutely.
And I think that's important. So medical advancements, tremendous benefits in terms of the latest techniques, tools, medications, perhaps a cost alleviation if the trial then pays for your medication. I think these are some huge reasons why people should consider a clinical trial.
Yes.
So thank you so much, Dr. Licata. Well, Jennifer, now we turn to you, and we'd like to talk with you about the process that people go through. We've been talking a little bit about it, that you do sign up, that you're not signing your life away.
Sure.
But could you tell us what that process is like now? Again, you are a staff nurse, a clinical research nurse with Nebraska Cancer Research Center. And as a result, then you are out in the oncology clinics, and that's where you actually enroll the patients in the trials, is that right?
We actually collaborate with the physicians, with the oncologists, to find and look for existing patients that they're already seeing and new patients that come in for perhaps their initial visit. The patient could have been seen in the hospital at one time by the oncologist, or they could just come in for their initial visit into the office. We screen them or look at them, see if we have any clinical trials that would be available or fitting for them, and then approach the oncologist and see if maybe they would be a good fit for that trial if they are eligible. If they are not eligible, it could be that they're eligible for something down the road if something else doesn't work. So we keep that in mind too.
Great.
We just kind of play it by ear. If they're a new patient or existing patient, like Dr. Mehta had mentioned, there are different types of clinical trials. There are treatment trials, there are prevention trials, and there are control trials.
Oh, interesting.
So if there's always not a treatment trial, if they're suffering side effects or something like that, there could be a control trial that we may be able to put them on as well.
Wonderful. Could you just talk a little bit more about that to clarify that for our viewers?
Correct.
So you mentioned treatment, prevention, and control.
Correct.
So treatment, and that's what Tom is doing. He's on a treatment protocol right now. That's the type of trial that he's on. Okay.
A preventative trial would be if there is a patient who may be, I can't think of the word I want to use, I'm sorry. They may have tendencies to develop a type of cancer, like a colon cancer. They may have polyps. We have polyp prevention trials that we can put patients on so that they could take a medication, so hopefully they would not develop the polyps.
So this is someone that would be at high risk for a type of cancer, perhaps because of genetic testing or familial history, something like that.
Correct.
And okay, so they don't actually have cancer, but then you put them on a preventative trial.
Correct. Then there are also the control trials, which we see a lot of the patients that have unpleasant side effects that they do not wish to experience, nausea, vomiting. There are some that, there's one right now that is kind of a high enrolling one with pelvic radiation, so that can cause diarrhea. So that would be another trial that a patient could go on that's receiving the pelvic radiation. And we just try to help soothe their comfort and treat their symptoms.
And that is so very important. You know, as you're speaking, Jennifer, you're making me think about the fact that, you know, if someone is not on a clinical trial, they would be, if they were getting these treatments, they would be experiencing these side effects anyway. One of the things that I want to make sure our viewers know is that they aren't going through anything different on a trial. Well, they might be trying something new, but to be able to address their cancer and treat their cancer, they're going to need some kind of treatment. And oftentimes with cancer, it can be very challenging kinds of treatments. Your chemotherapies, I know, I went through chemotherapy, made me very, very ill. And that's pretty standard. Not everyone gets sick, but I think many people do. And that's whether you're on a trial or not.
Yeah.
I guess I just wanted to make that distinction. So, well, Jennifer, thank you so much. I appreciate so much your sharing with us about clinical trials, and we appreciate everything that you do at Nebraska Cancer Research Center. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
And Dr. Mehta, you are truly beloved. We enjoy you so much on the advisory board, which is where I've gotten to know you, and we're just so grateful for your expertise, for your knowledge, for your heart, and how you treat your patients. It's truly wonderful. And I know from Tom that you're first class. Thank you for being with us today. And Tom, wow, courageous. That's the word that I think of you being on this journey. And I know that our viewers, so many of them know you, and will be so pleased to know that you're doing well.
Doing quite well.
And have begun to understand a little bit more about, so once you got diagnosed with cancer, why did you go on a clinical trial, and why is it important that we join clinical trials? So
I'm just so pleased that I did this
yes.
for a lot of reasons.
So many wonderful reasons, and what I love most is what you shared today about the paying it forward, that someone 15, 20 years ago helped you.
That's right.
And now you're helping not only yourself, but now you're going to be able to give back and help somebody else. That's really wonderful.
As you did.
Well,
yourself.
and you know, that was a very important piece of it for me, was the giving back. It's so scary when you're on this journey. What can you do? And there's so much you have to learn, which I think is so exciting for our viewers today. Each one of you is sharing a different piece of what it's like to be in that cancer journey, be on that journey, and then be a part of a clinical trial, and why that's important, what may happen, what are the things that they might experience, and then how they can be a part. So thanks to each one of you for being with us today. It's extraordinary the ways in which you contribute to people who are going through their cancer journey and their journey participating in a clinical trial. Thank you so much for that. And Tom, for sharing your wonderful story with us today. We're just so very grateful.
Thank you. I'm glad to be part of it.
Thank you.
It's our pleasure. It's our pleasure. Thank you. So viewers, thank you again for joining us today in our conversations about clinical trials with the Nebraska Cancer Research Center. I'm Carol Ott Schacht, and I'm here on behalf of Nebraska Cancer Research Center, our advisory board, and our community partners. And for more information about clinical trials, would like to make sure that you are calling, we've got our number up on the screen, 402-483-2827. Or you could call any one of our community partners, Southeast Nebraska Cancer Center, Nebraska Hematology Oncology, Bryan Health, and St. Elizabeth's Regional Medical Center. Thank you again for being with us today, and in the event that you are facing cancer or considering what you might do to help a loved one who is facing cancer, please think about joining a clinical trial. Thanks again. We'll see you next time. Home is where you celebrate life. Home is where you spend time with loved ones. Home is where you cheer for the Huskers. And when you're diagnosed with cancer, home is where you want to be. The Nebraska Cancer Research Center offers hope right here at home in Lincoln. Ask your doctor about participating in cancer research. The Nebraska Cancer Research Center. There's no place like home for clinical trials.